I just wanna have peace. Pay for the bill, let them take my card, never see the receipt. Good health, we prize, but everybody around prosperity.
What's up, guys, and welcome to the LivBtr Podcast. This is your host, Jay Ciano, and this is the show for people trying to optimize every area of their life. Let's go.
I just wanna have peace.
What is up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the LivBtr Podcast. Today's guest is Chef James Barry. James was connected to me through his product, Pluck, which contains organ meats and is a very creative way to get these things into your food. James has cooked for many celebrities, been a private chef for Tom Cruise, Marissa Hargitay, George Clooney, the list goes on, and we're going to learn all about his background and how he created Pluck. Welcome to the show, James. James, you have an amazing background. Really excited to hear about it. Excited for my community to hear about it and dive into Pluck, which we didn't start discussing yet. but if you can give us a brief background on yourself, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Jay. It's truly an honor to be talking with you. A fellow, what do you call yourself, a redhead or a ginger?
I call myself, well, it's funny because I'm definitely a redhead. I when I was born, I was bright red. Yeah. And as time went on, like my hair got more brownish, my beard stayed red, and I have my younger son is bright red.
Bright red. Yeah, I saw photos of him, and that's how my hair was growing up. So, but I just think it's funny. People call all redheads now gingers. I'm like, what? Where did that name come from? I'm like,
that's definitely a newer thing. That was not a thing for me either.
I'm like, I was a redhead. I was like, it was brutal, right? Growing up. I mean, redheads. It was like we were different. We were born different, and we were treated differently. And you know, I was compared to Ronald McDonald. I mean, I was made fun of left and right. You know, so I have a very thick skin now.
You know what? It's funny because it's not a topic that's often discussed because there's so few of us. So, but when we see other redheads, right, you have this like instant bond. You're part of this tribe essentially. But it's funny that you say that because I have obviously I mentioned a son that's a redhead. And we're different, but I feel like we have some superpowers, you know, and like I've learned a lot more about like redhead DNA. And anytime I meet a lot of people, it's interesting, like that are fascinated with redheads, where like they'll stop me and just want to talk to me because right away they always see the beard and that's like the conversation starter. And anywhere I go with my son, it's like we can't walk 10 feet without somebody commenting. In a positive way, though, it's always like, oh, my God, your hair's so beautiful. And, you know, you're so handsome and all positive things, which wasn't always the case with myself. And I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm glad, though, to hear that it's positive for your son, because so it was always positive with adults, always.
Yes.
Particularly women and old men. They always were like, hey, red. They just loved that connector. Yep. And but it was kids that were cruel. It was always kids just being different. So that's really promising. Your son's probably fine in school, right? No one even comments on it in school.
You know what? Every now and again, you'll hear a comment and he'll get upset about it, but it's very rarely. And he's actually super popular, social butterfly. Yeah. Everybody gravitates to him. His personality is like a 15 out of 10, you know, so it works really, really well for him.
It is interesting though, because it's such a rare topic to get to talk to, because there's not a fellow redhead I'm talking to. And so it's interesting because you're forced to be seen, right? Whether you want to be or not. When we were younger, you would go into a room and you were you stood out. Didn't matter whether you wanted to or not. So you were forced to be kind of a focus. Yeah. And then you know, in many ways made fun of a lot of times by kids. So I kind of learned to navigate. I'm curious for you as well, if it helps shape who you are, but I learned to navigate people really well, almost like the way someone like comedians talk about how they learn to use their humor to connect with people.
Totally.
Like I immediately learned, my personality was shaped in like, okay, how can I take the focus off myself, but also how can I like make sure that I'm not like, I don't know, an asshole, like not made to stand out, you know, or made the butt of someone's joke. Like, how can I kind of neutralize the room? And I tend to do that even to this day. Like I go into a room and I'm just like, very forthright about meeting people and immediately kind of try to humanize the situation so that nothing is taking out of context. Maybe
it's funny because I'm like, as you're saying that, I'm reflecting on my childhood and trying to think about how much of that shaped me, because a lot of what you said definitely resonates. But I was a fat kid redhead,
which is a whole other level, right?
Which, you know what I mean? So like, I don't know if for me it was the fact that I was overweight, or if it was the red hair, or if so I've always had a very high level of emotional intelligence, and I can connect with any human on the planet pretty quickly. And I think that some of that definitely comes from exactly what you described, where, I was able to always kind of like spin a situation into my favor in some way and use things that I was standing out for to my advantage, as opposed to, not using them as a disability, kind of leveraging that in a very strategic way, which I definitely still do to this day, for sure.
Yeah, really fascinating. This is totally a topic I
know.
Get to talk about,
I didn't expect to get into this conversation, but I love it. I mean, rare that you could actually have this conversation. So I'm glad other people get to hear it. Maybe we'll start a podcast,
right?
The Gingers.
Yeah, or the fire crotches. That could be kind of like
Either way, we could choose and only have redheaded guests.
Totally. When I first moved to Portland, that was something that they were trying to do in Portland, and this was interesting because I moved to Portland, Oregon from LA, and I did not equate that the weather in Portland would be conducive towards more redheads, but Portland at the time, the first year I moved in 2015, they were trying to get the world's record of the most redheads all encapsulated, all kept in one area. And so they didn't succeed at that year, but I just found it interesting. And when I was living there for 8 years,
when you say weather, what do you mean exactly?
I think the weather is very Scottish Irish. It's very overcast and, very conducive towards very light skinned people.
Got it. Right.
Where they're not going to get sunburned. It's not like Florida or something where you can't go outside very, very, very long,
It's funny because I don't even think of that. I spend half my life in Florida and I'm outside all day.
Really? You don't get sunburn? Nothing?
I mean, I lather up, listen, I went to college at the University of Arizona and never put an ounce of sunscreen on, and was outside, obviously the majority of my life. I'm paying for that now because I'm constantly I have to get a full scan of my body quarterly. And I've had stage 0 melanomas removed, things of that nature. So, but that was that was not normal amounts of sun. That was an obnoxious amount of sun with 0 skin protection, which was idiotic, especially with my mom constantly telling me you have to make sure you have sunblock on, all the things that I do for my son now. But it's funny because I never really thought about the weather being a component. I've only thought about, again, the superpowers we have where, apparently it takes more anesthesia to put us under. We're way more resilient to many different things, higher pain tolerance, to certain things. I think I'm only paying attention to the things that I'm proud of.
Yeah, that's good perspective. Now, have you heard this? Because someone once told me this, and I haven't really looked into it, but that redheads are closer to Neanderthals than non-redheads. Have you heard that?
I have not, but I do spend time here and there, researching, because anytime that I come across somebody who's super obsessed with the fact that I'm a redhead, or my son, if I'm in a situation, I mean, there are times. I remember recently I was in DC and running to an Acela train, and the woman at Starbucks just would not let me leave Starbucks because she just wanted to talk. I very rarely meet redheads, and we're talking, and it's 5:30 a.m. I'm grabbing coffee, trying not to miss a train, and she's going into all these different statistics with me. And this is somebody that I would have no idea has any interest in it wasn't she was redheaded, so it's fascinating. It's really a fascinating topic that I don't pay enough attention to, and I'm glad that you're bringing it to my attention more.
Who knew, right? That
right?
would be so here's a question, and and then of course we can get off of it, but have you ever dated a redhead?
I have.
Okay. Because that's something you rarely see. You rarely see two redheads dating. And I'm always curious about that. I'm like, why? Like,
well,
what is it?
Because I don't think there's that many of us, right? So it's kind of, well, that and my own experience, from an attraction standpoint, there's Jessica Rabbit, and then there's everything else. In college, I found a Jessica Rabbit, and we dated for some time, and it was. But I think she actually, thinking back, I think she enhanced her red hair, though.
Yeah, so that's different. I'm talking like a true redhead. Like
she was a true redhead, but I think she actually modified the color to make it even more red. Like less orangey. Like almost more red.
I found growing up that I rarely was attracted to redheads. I don't know. As I got older, I was. As I got older, I was. But
did you ever date one?
I hooked up with one once when I was older, but we didn't actually date. And I
always thought Angie Everhart was Angie Everhart. Is that the redhead? Yeah. She was beautiful.
Yeah. Like certain actors, and there's a handful now that they're very attractive. I can recognize it now, but as a kid, it was almost like ew, and I don't know why. That's why I was kind of curious if you experienced that.
Think, I'm not a psychologist, but I think that based on your experience of being a redhead, you didn't really want to be one at times, so you didn't want to associate with them if you could pick and choose.
No, that's actually probably spot on, because I did. I fought. I remember around that junior high, around the age your son is, right? Like around that 11 to 14, I battled with it. I was really upset about it many times. And I remember some nights crying, just like, why do I have to be this way? And then that passed, and then I embraced it and realized, wow, this is a superpower. I really did come to realize that.
Do you have blue eyes?
I do. Yeah.
That's the most rare combination. My son and I are both redheads with blue eyes. Okay. Very rare. Most redheads have brown eyes.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. See? We're learning.
We're learning.
All right. So let's dive in. Let's transition into your background, because you have been a private chef for some amazing humans.
Yeah. I really,
even though you're a redhead, they still
they let me into their world. I couldn't believe it. Yeah. I became a chef kind of late in life. I always loved cooking as a kid. But for some reason, I was born in 73, and back in the day, being a chef meant you owned a restaurant. Like that was kind of it. There wasn't as many opportunities. So I just was like, well, I don't want to work late nights. I don't know. As a young kid, I was very aware that I didn't want that kind of lifestyle. So for the longest time, I just saw cooking as a hobby. And that's how I would read like cooking magazines. That's how into it I was, just for fun. And cookbooks. Those would be my reading, my nighttime reading. And then it wasn't until 9/11. 9/11 happened, and I really equate that as our generation's Pearl Harbor, and it just awoke in me to like, what am I doing in life? Like, am I doing the things that truly have heart, and am I doing the things that I'm here to do?
Yeah.
And
what were you doing before that? So what?
I was working in the entertainment business as pursuing acting. And then I was also substitute teaching on the side to ensure bills were paid. So I was doing both of those, and I still love the creative process. I love, I'm not as much into acting per se, but I love writing, and I just love creativity. But I felt like the substitute teaching was not in integrity at the time. Like that wasn't really what was in my heart. Yeah. I love teaching, but being a part of the LA Unified School District is not, it kind of takes the air out of the room. It wasn't, suddenly you were just a cog opposed to like really helping kids. I didn't feel like it was really helping kids. So 9/11 happened, and I realized, I just kind of audited my life. I was like, well, what is it I've always loved? And I realized it was cooking. And then it was like, okay, well then what do I want to do in cooking? Because I definitely still don't want to work in a restaurant. And then I realized, well, actually I wouldn't mind private chefing in the entertainment business. To me, I saw that as a perfect marriage of like, I get to be around creatives and then I
build a network.
Yeah. Build a network and help people. And so I found this school in New York. Well, initially I was looking at a lot of schools, California, all over the country. And I noticed there was this one culinary program in California where I was doing the research on the teachers of this program, and they had all gone to a New York school. So I thought to myself, why am I going to go to the California school? Why don't I go to the school they all went to? So I found this program in New York. It's no longer around anymore, but it's called the Natural Gourmet. It was exactly what I wanted. They kind of were really fusing nutrition and food. And that's something that may seem obvious to people nowadays, but a lot of chefs, they don't actually understand healthy food. They think healthy food is that age old, like grilled chicken, steamed vegetables. They don't really understand that how you prepare the food is what's going to make it healthy.
Yeah.
You know,
I want to dig into that because I think it's funny. Like my lunch today is grilled chicken and vegetables. So, you know, and right, I like to consider myself like super healthy. So we're going to dig back into that here in a bit.
No, for sure. And it's not that that's not healthy, but that's, I mean, back in the 80s and 90s, that is what people saw healthy food as bland, like very kind of specific foods, chicken and steamed vegetables. And hopefully people are now aware that you can do so much more.
There's so many more options now. It's
so many more options. And so this school was really doing that. And I had no money at the time. I spent a year raising money. I did some stupid, I mean, I say stupid, I think because it was illegal, but it wasn't stupid in terms of what I was trying to do. But so I was a substitute teacher, right? So what I would do is I would go buy, I noticed that there was never any water in the vending machines for these kids. And so I had been there a long time. I got to know the kids and they were always saying like, I want like ice water. And I was like, okay. So I would sell them. I would buy water in bottles and then I would freeze it and then bring it to school and sell it to them for $1. So I literally did it all school year. I did that and I slowly made money for culinary school. That's how I funded.
That's amazing. Just giving them what they want.
Just giving them water, you know, like, but yeah, it's so funny. And so I went to this culinary school and it ended up being the best thing I ever did because that school was known for creating really great private chefs that could cook healthy food and really cook any diet. So if you were vegan, they would be able to fulfill your needs. If you were just eating healthy omnivore, they could fulfill your needs. And so my first 2 years out of school, maybe even 3 years, every job I got was because someone called that school saying, hey, I'm looking for a private chef in LA. Oh, well, James was a really solid guy. He's very dependable. Because I got perfect attendance. I did everything. Like you can imagine if I was selling water to go to culinary school, like I took it very seriously.
Oh, right? Yeah.
Like I was dialed in. There were kids that were just out of high school going to culinary school and they would just, F off. They were just like, oh, we're in New York. Let's go party. And I'm like, no, this is my life. Like I am here to learn. And I did everything I could. Like any opportunity that came, I was doing it. And
it paid off, obviously.
Oh, it completely paid off. I mean, I was able to cook for Tom Cruise. I ended up cooking for George Clooney a little bit. I had opportunities to cook for Mariska Hargitay. I mean, just this endless list of celebrities and eventually some billionaires. I remember when I eventually did go to like one of those hiring agencies that help you find chef jobs, they looked at my resume and they said, who did you work with previously? I'm like, myself? What are you talking about? No one. And they're like, how did you build this resume? And I'm like, I don't know. It was just word of mouth. And they were blown away.
So did you end up cooking for Tom Cruise and George Clooney through the school? Like somebody reached out on their behalf and
for George, it was word of mouth. Because once I was in kind of the Hollywood system,
sure,
you get to know assistant. It's really the assistants that are bringing in, the different chefs. So for Tom, it was the person who ran his household. They called the school. The school recommended me. Now that story is kind of interesting because Tom Cruise doesn't let you know you're cooking for Tom Cruise because they don't want you doing anything to the food that, you don't know who you're cooking for when you first provide a sample of your style of cooking. And I just remember it was very kind of like weird. Like I got this call and like, hey, can you do this? And I actually initially said no, but then they were like, well, oh no, I'm sorry. At this point I said yes. I'm like, oh yeah, sure. They said, can you just bring a sample of your food? So I'm driving it into Beverly Hills and I get to this house and there's like what looks like almost CIA at like a guard booth. I mean, they're in like black tie suit. I'm like, who is this a politician? I'm like, who is this? And then I dropped off the food, and then I didn't meet anyone. I left, and then I did a little research on the person who called, and I eventually connected it to him. But what's so interesting is when they offered me the job, I actually said no.
Really?
Yeah, mostly
Why?
because I was already cooking for a lot of people, and I got the sense that they wanted someone full time. Like they kind of wanted to own whoever was cooking for them so they could be available all the time. And I was already cooking for like 5 other people, and I liked my freedom. I liked being able to, I was cooking out of my location, and then I would deliver the food or they would pick it up. And so, but they loved the food so much. They said, well, what are you? They basically asked the question, well, okay, if you don't want to do that, then what are you willing to do? And I said, well, I said, what else do you need? And they said, well, we need food for luncheons, like for the lunch meetings. I said, great, I'll do that. And then I did that for a month. Never met him at this point. Just was cooking for all his United Artists. This is when he was helping to run United Artists. And I was just cooking for the luncheons. And then I guess it was going so well, they asked me to fly to Europe with him for pre-production on a movie. And that's when I met him. And I met all the other people associated with the movies. And it was a real moment for me, actually, because, as I mentioned, I was pursuing acting. Yeah. So I knew all these different, I knew Tom, everyone knows Tom, but I knew all the directors, I knew the producers, like I knew the names of Hollywood. And so here I entered this room. This is when Tom was shooting Valkyrie. And I entered this room. This is the first time I'm meeting him, but I got to meet Bryan Singer. I got to meet Chris McQuarrie. They did Usual Suspects, which was a big movie back in the day, right? Movie. I mean, that was amazing movie.
Sose.
Yeah, exactly. I got to meet Tom's partner at the time. I'm forgetting her name right now, but she was also very well known. And what was so amazing is that I walked into this room. Tom brought me into the room just to introduce me to everyone, and they all stood up and clapped for me. So here are all these people that I historically had been researching and was following in their careers. Here I was in a room where they were clapping for me. And it was just a real moment of like, oh, I've arrived. That was the moment where I said, okay, I know what I'm doing. Like I'm a chef and I know how to cook. But before then it was like, like that, whenever you first learn a vocation, you're like, I'm an imposter. I don't really know what I'm doing. But that moment was like, okay, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. You were authenticated and validated in that moment.
Yeah. And then from there, I ended up cooking for him for about 2 years. After that job, I went ahead and stayed with them. So they eventually got me as a full-time chef, but I fought it for a little bit. But he was a really good guy. Everyone always asks, but he really was a good guy. And
I have to ask, what was his favorite meal?
Oh man, well he's from the South, right?
Okay.
So he's originally from the South. So a lot of people don't realize that. And he likes his comfort foods just like anyone else. He's just incredibly disciplined, right? Yeah. I mean, he's the ultimate actor that took his brand or himself and really made it a brand.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, they're actors and they don't take it as seriously, but he's just like, no, my body is my brand. My look is my brand. And so he works his ass off. And I think everyone knows that because he's been around for so long, you can tell. Like he's the quintessential focus. Like he's the focused, clear-headed, this is my business kind of person, and he's very, very well respected for it. Very well respected.
And I mean, just the stunts that he does, he has to be in amazing physical condition, to do all these things.
I was cooking for him when he did, what was that movie that he did where he was in the fat suit?
I remember it, but
it was Jack Black was in it, and Robert Downey Jr. and Ben Stiller.
Yes.
I can't believe I'm forgetting that movie, but wait, what is it called? I'm seeing it. All right. Well, that movie though, when he was filming that, I was cooking for him, and that was wild. Like kind of, I had to make everything so he could drink it because he was so limited in how he couldn't move his mouth very well. So I had to make everything so that he could drink it out of a straw while he was shooting that film.
I mean, were you like putting steaks into smoothies, or was I
was getting very creative because like that's the thing is like just like anyone, you get sick of it, right? You don't want to have like a strawberry or a chocolate smoothie every freaking meal. You know what I mean? Like, so I was trying to make it really creative where he could feel like he was still getting a variety, and it was challenging. We struggled a little bit.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, what do you think it was that had them so enamored with your food and, you know, wanting to work with you as much as possible? What do you think it was that you were doing differently that they gravitated towards?
Well, I think this was true for all my clients then, because I worked with a lot of families, a lot of women who had been struggling for years to lose their baby weight. And when I started cooking for them, they finally started losing it. And I really see it. And this is actually a really great question, because it's ultimately the answer is really how I see food. I feel like trends come and go.
Yeah.
I mean, I now been around over 20 years in this business. And when I first came out, the fat flush diet was the big book, you know, and then Atkins was here and there. And then there was Skinny Bitch. And I mean, you name it. There was just every freaking trend out there. But the one thing that I don't think is a trend is just eating real food.
Right.
And that's really how I approached it. Everything I did was from scratch. So there were no dressings from the grocery store. There was no sauces that were in a jar. Like, I made everything with real food, even to the point where, like, if I sweetened something, I used a date. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't use sugar, things like that.
No stevia, no.
Stevia was not a thing then.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
It was Sweet and Low.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have even touched it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I was
interesting. Yeah, I mean, because I'm very healthy. My wife's a dietitian, nutritionist, got her master's at NYU. And
Nice.
I'm fortunate to have that at home cooking for me every meal. But it's back to my point earlier, you know, I'm still grilled chicken, mixed vegetables. I'm not hyper focused on, you know, are the restaurants I'm going to using seed oils, you know, like I have to do it in a way that I could still also operate and function, you know, in a relatively convenient way while eating healthy and, you know, whole foods and things of that nature. I restrict my eating window as well. But talk a little bit more about, you know, how people can actually embrace what you do and do it themselves.
Yeah, I think that's really important. What you just said is that you got to make it work for you. You know, we can't live in this ideal state of what we think life is like. We have to live in this world. And I'll just share this little story, and then I'll get even more specific about things that people can do. But so my wife is actually she's a functional nutritionist, so she's also in the health field. And when we were first together, we would always I always had to treat myself like I would test different diets, because I had to understand the diet, but not just from a theory level. I had to understand how to cook for it, because I had clients that were always asking to do these crazy diets. And so I would have to understand them, you know, up and down. Yeah.
Whole 30.
Whole
like
30
anyone they throw at you, right? Like,
or master cleanse was huge then. I would have to
cabbage soup,
all that stuff, man. And so like I had to really understand how to do it. And so I did this one diet. We did it together, and we did it for 30 days. And it was the best I have ever felt, ever. Still to this day. And you want to know what it was? It was basically what you call primal raw. So I was eating raw animal product.
Really?
But I was making sure that it was really clean. Like I was getting really like untouched ground buffalo, for example. Yeah. You really had to make sure it's coming from a very clean source. But I was doing that. I was doing raw butter, raw cream, anything that was raw, I would do. And it wasn't just animal, but that's primarily what you eat. Is because a lot of the vegetables that we think that we should eat raw really don't do your digestive process very well raw. So
okay. I mean, I definitely have been mindful about increasing my animal protein, you know, as I'm trying to put on more muscle and
right.
You know, and my good friend, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, who just,
she's heavy into talking about that.
I was just with her in Austin actually. And, you know, all the things, but raw, where would I get raw food like that I know I can trust?
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. It does exist, but here's the thing. So we did this for 30 days. One thing is I ate a lot less than I do when I eat cooked meat. It's like I was so satiated by just a little bit. My poops were the best they ever had been. Like really? Just incredible. Not, you know, the kind where you don't have to clean. You don't even have to wipe. Yeah. It's so freaking beautiful, right? And And like, it's just like, it was amazing.
Beautiful.
It's like amazing, right? And we did this for 30 days and it was awesome. But to your point, it wasn't realistic because you couldn't go out to eat. You couldn't, unless you're, you're going to eat, I don't know, like unless you're only going to restaurants that are serving the raw meat dish,
Yeah.
It's usually an appetizer.
Tartare.
Thank you. Yeah. So like you basically are stuck going to restaurants like that. And then even then it's just not realistic. We couldn't really go to parties. We just had our first daughter, our first baby, and we couldn't, give her raw food yet. So it just became not realistic. So here's this amazing diet and it's not going to last. So I still now go back to defaulting to, okay, let's just focus on making things from scratch. So one thing that I immediately recommend everyone does, if you're going to take one step, is just start making your own dressings, because that's one of the hidden places where you just get a lot of crap, like a lot of things that are just, we have to remember when we're buying in the grocery store, there's a couple of really important points to remember. One is that the cheapest ingredients are salt and sugar. So you're going to find it in everything, right? Because all the businesses that are selling food want to maintain, they want to make a profit, right? So you have to use cheap ingredients to make a profit. So salt and sugar is going to be in everything. The other thing is oils. Oils are expensive. Fat is expensive. So they're going to use cheap oils when they can. And so you're going to, even if it says on the package, oh, it uses olive oil, I guarantee it's not extra virgin, unless they say extra virgin. It's what it is it's probably like a mix. It's probably like a little bit of olive oil with some soy oil or some canola oil or something. It's going to be some kind of mix to cheapen the cost of making the product.
Yep.
So that's one thing that's really important. The other thing is when you make a food product, you are making it so that it can last on the shelf as long as possible. Because if your food doesn't sell immediately, you don't want it to get pulled from the shelf and then returned to you, because you pay for that. Like,
for sure,
a lot of people don't realize like that grocery stores screw the manufacturer. Like,
the shelf life is everything, right?
It's like everything. So you need to have a good shelf life. And to do that, you have to use these ingredients that are preservatives, these things that are going to make it last on the shelf. And so a mix of those cheap ingredients, the preservatives, those are the things that are causing issues in our body. To the point where I'm sure you grew up learning this too. Like, there was that urban myth, which I don't think is a myth, I think is true, is that human bodies are decomposing slower than they used to because we're so filled with preservatives.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Right?
For sure.
So that's really right away. One thing you could do is just start making your own dressings. And one like quick tip to do it is you just do a ratio. So in the US, it's typical to do about a 3-to-1. So you do 3 parts oil or fat, whatever you're using, to 1 part vinegar. So that could be extra virgin olive oil. That could be really any oil you want to choose. I don't want to tell you what oil to use because I know sometimes that's dictated by what people can afford. So
sure,
the key is like just choose 3 parts oil to 1 part vinegar. Now, I will say vinegar can be lemon juice. It could be lime juice. It could be literal vinegar like balsamic or white vinegar. You can mix. It's just acid is what we're saying. It's like 3 parts oil to 1 part acid. And really what you're doing is when you're doing ratios, you just got to make sure that the container you're measuring it with is the same for both. It doesn't matter what you use. It could be a tablespoon, a teaspoon. It could be the cap to the oil. It doesn't matter. You just got to keep it the same for both. So if you're measuring it with the oil, you got to do the same measurement for the acid. But if you just put those 2 things in a mason jar, shake it up, you've got a vinaigrette like ready to go within 30 seconds, as long as you have the ingredients on hand.
I mean, I eat a ton of salads, and I'm definitely just eating these sugary, salty dressings, which is why I always typically ask for the dressing on the side. And I try to use it very sparingly. And actually, it's funny because I posted on my Instagram story when I was traveling. I saw something on ketchup, and I literally posted on my story like I'm quitting ketchup, because anytime I come across these things, I'm like, I just remove things from my life.
I find it's easy. A lot of people don't. We grew up in an age where some parents are like, "Oh, you're so restrictive," or "I want to say yes to my kid, not no," right? But the reality is when you have a boundary, it actually makes life a lot easier. Like, that's why eating carnivore diet is so amazing for so many people. It's not just the health benefits some people are getting, but it's also like you just remove any decision making. You just, it's like, what am I eating today? I'm eating meat. Exactly. What are you eating tomorrow? I'm eating meat. It's like you no longer have to think about it, and you can just kind of dial into what a lot of the bodybuilders figured out, you know, decades ago, over half a century ago, which is if you eat the same thing over and over, you know, you get kind of like in this zone of like your body knows what to expect. You get in a zone of how to prepare it. You can prepare 50, you know, grilled chickens all at the same time. It's like, it becomes easier. It's the same thing like Einstein wearing the same suit every day. It's like when we remove these kind of extraneous decisions, life becomes a lot easier on a certain level.
Yeah, no, I do that quite a bit actually. I started with my closet. You know, I typically only wear black, and I have a lot of like these pants. I have like 7 pairs of the same black pants. You know, it's
smart.
How many decisions do you need to make in a day, right? When I have to wake up and take an ice bath first thing, then I have to do my workout, then I have, you know, I'm also super disciplined and my days are like on repeat. Right. And it's funny because Dr. Gabrielle Lyons said when she was speaking, she said that her most successful, highest functioning clients are the ones that have every single thing planned out, you know, for the day, essentially.
Which is actually a really good health tip too. And one that a lot of people kind of underestimate, which is meal planning.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, that's the thing. Like I have always paid close attention to bodybuilders and, you know, tried to be as healthy as possible, but a lot of them obviously meal prep on Sundays for the week.
The whole week. Yeah. They do everything they're going to eat and they just eat the same thing over and over. Yeah. There's a lot of power in that. You know, it's like when you meal plan, you remove that. Like, that's what I'm talking about. Even with making your own salad dressing, right? We just remove the thing that's kind of the lowest hanging fruit, the thing that can be easy, and doing it in a ratio is very easy. Doing it in a mason jar, you shake it up, you're done. Yeah. But like, if you remove these things that are really the things that push us over the edge, and why meal planning is one of those for me, is that when is the part of your what part of the day are you kind of at your weakest in terms of your making food choices? It's really the end of the day, right? It's like after you've been making all these decisions all day, if someone comes to you at 5 o'clock and says, "Hey, what are we having for dinner?" You're just like, "Fuck it, let's just have pizza." You know what I mean? Totally. Like, you're just like, I'm over it, right?
Right.
But if you've planned it ahead of time, and you're like, okay, I know I'm busy, you know, I'm working all day Monday and Wednesday, but Tuesday I have time. So Monday and Wednesday are going to be slow cooker days because I could throw everything in the morning and it's all ready for me at 5. Tuesday, I'm going to do a little bit more of an elaborate meal. You know, you can literally plan it based on your schedule, based on your workload. You already made a list, a grocery list. So now you're also not going to the grocery store and making emotional purchases or, hey, this candy bar is on sale, I'll just get it now. You know, right? It's like, no, it's not on your list. If it's not on your list, you don't buy it.
That's it.
You know, so these little movements, this little bit of pre-planning affects everything. It affects the choices you make all week. It affects the food you bring into your house. It affects your stress level. So then there's none of this kind of like arguing with your partner of like, well, who's cooking tonight? Why am I always doing everything? Why can't you do it? You know, whatever it is, right?
No, it's all routine. Yeah, I love it. By the way, I just thought of a few really, I think, amazing ideas that we'll talk about offline.
Okay.
So let's fast forward to Pluck. Yes. Or if you want to, because obviously I want to talk about the product, which I've been enjoying. Thank you very much for sending it our way. Do you want to fast forward to what was the idea that sparked the creation of that? Or do you want to keep going through kind of and get to that point?
Maybe I'll do a quick share. Yeah, okay. Combo, quick share, and then fast forward. So this is because this connects to something we were talking about before we started pressing record, is that, you know, one of the things you see in every health influencer out there, any person, including our partners who are in the health field, anyone that is supporting someone else's health, the person that is kind of suffering the most in that relationship is the person who's dispensing the help, right? It's because you're helping everyone else be healthy, but it's you who's suffering because you're the one who's not being healthy. You know,
selfless to a fault.
Yes.
I say that really to my wife all the time. I'm like, yes, you're so proud that you're selfless, but you're suffering as a result of that because you don't have boundaries. You don't spend enough time watering, yourself, right? Like totally
agree. It comes with the field of helping people, but it also comes just with being an entrepreneur as well, right? Yeah. When you have major output, it's hard to stop and just feed yourself, because we get so kind of caught in the cog, the machine, and we forget to just kind of like stop for a second, take a walk, and just realize, hey, I haven't been breathing deeply for the last hour, or I haven't I'm actually really hungry because I haven't eaten in 7 hours, or I haven't had a glass of water, whatever, or I didn't work out, whatever it is. So for me, I was running a meal delivery service. After I left Tom, I started a meal delivery service in LA. It's called Wholesome to Go. It actually still exists. I just don't have anything to do with it anymore.
What's it called?
Wholesome to Go.
Okay.
I can't speak.
That was actually going to be a natural question that I was going to ask you. So I'm not surprised that you ventured in that direction.
I did, and I didn't do it very well, and I'll tell you why. Because I tried to.
It's also not easy to do and scale.
Exactly, and what I did wrong was that I tried to take the personal chef experience and apply it to the entire business. Like, so we were trying to personalize everyone's meal. Well, that works when you have 20 clients, but when you have 80 or more, it's impossible, because suddenly you're cooking like a deconstructed chili, for example, because this person doesn't like chilies, this person doesn't like peppers, this person wants turkey, ground turkey, this person wants beef.
Thank you. It sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It seriously was. And yeah, so I learned my lesson there, but I ran it for 8 years. Feel like I helped a lot of people, kind of supported them with their health.
It has to be more of a mission-driven thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where that's exactly what it is. And I have friends that are in that business, and I've helped try to solve for their scaling issues, because that's really my superpower, is helping businesses scale.
That's what I read about that. Yeah, I'd love to talk to you more about that offline too.
For sure.
But so I did that, and my health was suffering. We moved from LA just so I could get out from under that business, because I couldn't, while I was in LA, I really couldn't get out from it. And so leaving LA forced me to really make the business autonomous, where it could run without me. I ended up selling it to some people that I didn't think were the right people for it, but I just needed to get out, and they ended up having to sell it a few years later, because they ran it into the ground and they were in debt. But here's the thing though, I got out of LA. I was a stay-at-home dad for a few years, because we had just had our second child then. And it was during that time that I got my health back, and I was able to sleep with the baby on my chest. I did that a lot, and had many days where I just kind of like just rested. I got to exercise more. I got to start focusing on my health again by eating better. And within a couple of years, what also people don't realize is when you're always stressed out, you also lose a major superpower, which is your creativity, your imagination. You lose it. You completely lose it. And I had lost.
You don't have enough space.
No, you don't have space. You're exhausted. And I lost my creativity and imagination when I was so stressed out running that business. And I got it back when I was in Portland. And that's when I got the idea for Pluck. It was a mix of kind of this overarching mission of, I've always just wanted to help people with their health. And that question is always dogging me of like, okay, how do I help the person? Because as humans, we just want to eat comfort foods. So how do I make comfort foods healthier? And how do I get you to eat these foods, but not have it be conditional, like where you're only eating them because you're being disciplined, but more that it's something so easy and so delicious that it doesn't matter what state you're in, you just do it, that it's like brushing your teeth. So I'm always kind of dogged by that question. And I identified, of course, that organ meats are hands down, they are the most nutrient dense food on the planet. I mean, even more so than beef. And we're not doing it. We're not eating it.
So based on the recipe in Pluck, you're able to get the health benefits of that just through the seasoning, essentially.
Yeah, because so what I did was I took what was already in capsules, right? The freeze-dried powdered organ meats. And a lot of people there's really two main ways to get organ meats. It's to eat them, to purchase them and eat them, cook them, eat them, or to take capsules. That's really it. There's no other secret sauce to it. But I kind of identified, well, I'm like, but the reality is people aren't cooking them. They're not eating them that way. They don't know how to source them. They don't know how to cook them. And then they also think they taste gross. So they're not even going there, right? But then the people that are doing the capsules, you get capsule fatigue, you forget to do them. They're expensive. But the other big issue that a lot of people don't talk about is, I'm all about, we can talk ancestral till we're blue in the face. But if you're taking capsules, what's ancestral about taking a capsule? Because you're completely bypassing your natural digestive process. Like we have a biological system that works really freaking well, right? Your eyes can see the food. That's why when you plate food, it's so important to have colors and textures going on around it, because your eyes see it. That starts the I'm hungry process. Like I want to eat this, right? We eat with our eyes, right? And then, so that's the start. But then when you put it in your mouth, there's a whole process that starts. Like if I put salt on your tongue, your body immediately tells you instantaneous, like, oh, this is good. Or it's like, no, you're good. Don't do any more. And everyone can experience this, because we'll do like one and we'll be like, oh, this is good. You'll do another one and it's like, it's a little different. You try to do that third and it's like, nope, oh, it's gross. There's something off. Like body saying no more, right? Yep. That's what happens when we put it on the tongue and we go through our natural biological process. There's a communication that happens. But if I swallow a salt tablet, I swallow it. There's no communication that happens. It's delayed response. 15, 20 minutes later, why am I bloated? Oh, I got too much. And we hear this all the time, right? If you take a capsule, like, oh, I feel so nauseous after taking this capsule. Well, that's because you're not working with your body. You're just going off of what a bottle said. The bottle said to take 6. I'm just doing what like, how the hell does how does that company know what you need?
Right.
What I mean? Your body knows. And so I feel like part of my mission is not only to support people in getting organ meats, and really I say whole animal, because I'm really I'm not trying to say don't eat muscle meat. I'm trying to say, let's just eat the whole animal. Let's not waste the whole animal. So it's kind of supporting that mission, but then it's also like, and let's get back in touch with what our own bodies needs are. There's a professor of archaeology, Bill Schindler. He wrote the book Eat Like a Human. You should have him on your show, by the way, and I can set that up.
Yeah, I would love that.
He has a great quote, and it's that we are the only species in the world that looks to someone else to tell us what to eat. Like, let that land, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's fascinating.
Right? It's like, on a level, it makes me so sad. I'm like, gosh, man, there's a lot of species in this world, and every one of them knows exactly what they need to do. Why do we not? What makes us so different?
Fascinating. Yeah, it's fascinating too, because people are so passionate on either side of eating animal protein, so every kind of philosophy, if you have one philosophy, somebody has an equal argument for another philosophy. And anytime that I'm having the conversation about us being carnivores, or, I was talking to somebody with Eric Hinman, I think it was like 3 or 4 of us in a circle on Saturday. And we were talking about, somebody was saying that, humans really, primarily ate plants early on and kind of went into this thing. And I'm just listening, how do you know? I don't, and then when you think about us having canine teeth, right? I've heard so many things about that. How much meat are we supposed to be eating? Everybody has a different philosophy on all of that. It works really well for me. I happen to eat, a heavy carnivore diet, but I incorporate whole foods and salads and, all the things. I'm not strictly eating meat, which I did for actually probably 2-3 years at one point. And I did the Atkins diet, and I just ripped out carbs, and I lost 45 pounds.
Wow. Is that when your body started to transform? Was that the start?
Oh, I mean, that was the biggest physical transformation of my life. I was at the peak. I was at just shy of, I was like 240 pounds.
Well, that's pretty big.
And especially at my height, I'm not quite 5'10".
Oh, okay. That is big.
And and I, today I weigh in at probably just right around 170.
Yeah, that's a sweet spot. That's a good one.
It's a sweet spot, but it's interesting because I just did an in-body scan, and I definitely am not as lean as I'd like to be. For me, I'm very lean. I've never been really this lean and in this shape, but I think I can get in better shape too as my body composition continues to change.
Well, you only know what you know, right? And it's like that. I mean, that actually speaks.
That's the quote that started this whole conversation, right? I think we have to read the actual.
Yeah, Maya Angelou: do your best until you know better, and then do better, right? Yeah.
There you go. Amazing quote, which I will now probably get tattooed on me on Thursday. So thank you.
But to your point, like I've also come to that conclusion of like, you know, we all have to have our journey with our diet and our food, but we have to have the dignity of that journey. I've been in rooms where people, you know, it's Weston A. Price Foundation. For the most part, most of those people are very hardcore, like pro animal, like eating animal and eating other things as well, but eating the whole animal. And I was in a room with probably at that time, it was like 300 people. And the person was talking, they were refuting the China study. So it was this woman who had become very well known for her basically showing how the China study is just propaganda. And so the first thing she said was like, so who in this room has ever been vegan? And every single person raised their hand. Like everyone we all started somewhere. You know, most people that are in the health field, they're there because they either got sick or they know someone they loved got sick, right? You don't go down a certain path just randomly, right? So it's like, we're all here for a reason. Like you said, you grew up feeling fat, right? So it's like that probably supported you on this journey of like, hey, I want to feel better in my body, right? We need the dignity of that process. So if that means you're vegan, vegetarian, pescivore, whatever, pescatarian, whatever it is, kudos to you. The thing that I just ask people, and this kind of goes back to that intuitive eating, which is I just say, look, whatever diet you follow, that's your head making a decision, right? But when you go to listen to whether that diet is right, let your body dictate the answer. That's all I ask people. Just if you're getting digestive stress from what you're doing, that's your body saying, hey, it's not working.
Right, exactly. And I feel like there has to be better ways with our, you know, technology today for us to really have customized solutions to that problem where I can go somewhere, I can get my labs done, get whatever scans I need done to know what I'm deficient in and have a program set up for me based on me, not you, me, right? Because we can't all be eating the same when we're all completely different, right? Like it makes no sense to assume that something that's going to work for you is going to work for me and vice versa.
Totally. I mean, and the reality is look at how many different diets there are in the US, but yet it's something like 93% of Americans are nutrient deficient. Like that's a shitload of people. Like that is a very high number. And so that tells you that it almost doesn't matter what diet you're on. Like you're still going to have to figure out some kind of supplemental thing because food is just not what it used to be. You know, they've been tracking produce since the late 50s, and every decade it's degrading, every single decade.
Sure.
So it doesn't, like the tomato of today is not the tomato of yesterday. And even if it's heirloom, you know, you just don't know. You don't know what you're getting. I just learned this summer, I was driving, I mentioned to you earlier that I moved from the West Coast to the East Coast, and I was driving across the country this summer. And I learned that even if produce is organic, doesn't matter whether it's organic or not, a lot of times, and this is with grains, legumes, and beans and legumes, grains, I'm trying to think what else, but it's those kind of crops. They will dry that crop with glyphosate. So it doesn't matter if it's organic, because normally we're choosing organic because we're under the suspicion or expectation that it's going to be glyphosate free. But that's still not the case. They dry the crop with glyphosate, but they don't have to, it's still organic because it was grown organically.
Got it.
And they're not connected, you know, according to the, you know, FDA. So right there, that kind of tells you, you know, we have to assume that the majority of the things we think, you know, we're doing, that we have the best intentions of doing, we think we're being so clean, we have to assume that it's probably not as clean as you think it is. So then the question becomes, okay, now what do you do? Like, do you keep getting stressed? You know, more and more stressed about, you know, micromanaging every label of food you eat? Or do you at one point just say, you know what, I'm going to throw that out the window and I'm just going to listen to my body as I eat things. And I'm just going to follow that with the intelligence, the kind of common sense that sometimes I might crave ice cream and it's not about the ice cream, right?
Sure.
So you have to kind of balance it out with modern living, but ancestral knowledge of like, what does my body need versus, okay, we're also in a very stressed out life. We're constantly being bombarded with misinformation. So how do you navigate those two things? And I just say you keep asking that question, and hopefully you will eventually figure out your own body.
So I'm sure everybody's wondering by now how you eat.
Yeah.
What do you eat? What is your routine when it comes to eating? What's your typical day
Well,
like?
I created Pluck kind of from me and my family, and I'm just grateful that I have enough resources to then provide it for everyone else. But like, so one of the ways I eat is I use Pluck a lot. I put it on everything, and Pluck is it's free. I took the freeze-dried powdered organ meats from the capsules, but I combined it with organic spices and herbs to make it taste good. So then that way, instead of us swallowing a pill, we're eating it. And we use 5 organs. We use liver, heart, kidney, spleen, and pancreas. And we make it taste really good. And so
tastes great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you think that. And I every now and then I do meet someone who's just like, oh, it's not for me, but it's pretty rare. I mean, I was able to use my kind of chef intuition on making sure it was delicious first, like that was the first thing.
Yeah. Well, I think you accomplished that.
Thank you. But I put that on everything. And for the most part, I'm right now, I'm really kind of counting my macros because I'm also trying to kind of fine tune my body. I've been, I have this idea, this goal of what I want it to be. And I'm turning 50 this year, and I'm just not going to let up till I reach that goal. Like
I'm right behind you.
Nice.
My birthday's in a couple of weeks, and I'm trying to do the same. Yeah.
It's like you want every year you gain, you want to feel better than the previous year. That's my goal. So whatever it takes to keep aging gracefully and feeling younger or better than I did the previous year, that's what I'm going to keep doing. And so
it's funny because my earlier years were so terrible for so many reasons, and alcohol, and I was a DJ and in nightclubs all the time and all that stuff. So now it's like easy for me. Like every year, I get so much healthier and feel so much better. I feel like in some ways I'm aging backwards because I lived in this like fog of hangovers essentially for so many years. So now it's easy.
That's amazing. I mean, how many people get to say that? Because when I was driving across the US, it's clear we have issues here in the US. Like it's crystal clear. We're very privileged on the coast. We have a different, it's almost like we're in a different time period, but as you go into the US inward, it's almost like going back in time, and you just see people eating these things that you're just like, man, I learned 5 years ago not to eat that. And you just see the health issues and how many people are not feeling good in their body. You can see it on their face. You can just see it. But the biggest issue is that people don't realize, and it took me a long time to realize this. It took me till I was in my 20s, but a lot of people don't realize that the food they eat affects their health. Like, I know that seems very rudimentary to a lot of us, but it's not true. Like, a lot of people still do not realize that if I eat this food, it's going to result in this, my body feeling or whatever issue that's going on. That there's a lot we can do with our health just by changing what we eat. I wish I could support people and really seeing that even more. The problem is once again, people don't really make changes. We're such interesting creatures, us humans, is that we won't make a change unless we get sick or someone close to us gets sick. It's just like, it's like,
for sure.
And dietary change is one of the hardest ones for people to do,
What do you do? What's your fitness routine like?
Well, so I'm eating fairly carnivore. I do still eat some vegetables, but I mostly, meat. I put Pluck on it. And then I'm also still trying to cook organs when I feel inspired. I work out. I basically work out 5 to 6 days a week. So basically, like today was a Monday, so I'm doing a whole body weight. I do lots of weights when I do whole body. And then the next day is cardio, and then I just flip flop every day. I'm also delving in. I'm now doing some testosterone just to kind of, because my numbers were getting down. They were getting really low.
Yeah. I'm very intrigued by that. I've been learning as much as possible.
Yeah. I'm not going to scream from the rooftop like some people do and be like, oh, this is amazing, because I'm still new at it, but I'm trying it because I definitely was recognizing that as I've gotten older, that my body is changing and that it's getting harder to, make adjustments,
Sure.
And so which
is normal.
Yeah, which is totally normal.
If your levels are lower.
Yeah, exactly. And then once I got measured and I saw, oh, hey, this is also equated to, there's so many chronic health things that are equated to hormones. I think the fact that we have the medicine is now measuring these things and seems pretty accurately measuring them. I think it's worth to listen, because it's like, I know a lot of people that are reversing some chronic illness with it, chronic depression, things like that. It's like, you'd be surprised how much that kind of stuff affects your everyday.
Yeah.
And I feel good. My sleep definitely increased. My sleep really helped.
Do you monitor any of do you wear a Whoop or an Oura ring or anything?
I was, and then when I moved, I kind of put it in some box and I don't know where it is.
Probably, it's funny because it's like one of those things where I'm so attached to my Whoop data now that it's like almost too much, where like I'll wake up and I'll track my sleep and I'm like, oh man, like I slept really light last night. Today's going to be I'm not going to operate at a higher level today. And you kind of like think that into existence a little.
I think I think that's so insightful. I think you're right on. Like it's kind of like, a glucose monitor, right? Like a CGM, right? Like you're not necessarily, unless you're a diabetic, you're not necessarily supposed to be wearing that all the time, right? You wear it for a couple months to see, okay, when I'm eating this food, this is what it's doing in my body, so that you can kind of get better at your eating, so you're not spiking your levels, right? I kind of see it the same way with all these measurements. Is I'm very pro. I think it's really important to have a baseline to know when I'm feeling like crap. Oh, this is why, or I slept this way and this equated how I feel, whatever it is, whichever direction. Totally. But I do think at one point I don't know. I'm always trying to I feel like, those little pendulum balls, and they're constantly going like that. Right. I feel like I'm always striving to kind of find that balance in the middle. And if I stay too far to the left of like measuring everything, then I'm missing out on, well, what are my instincts? You know what I mean? But totally. They both serve each other. Like it helps you need to know some measurements to know what's going on.
Yeah, but to your point, you could just kind of learn the measurements, right? And then you could take periods of time that you're going to track it and then get rid of it and follow your intuition with the understanding and knowledge that you obtain.
Yeah, and then come back to it as you need. That's kind of my philosophy with a lot of things, I think it really is about like, what is our innate intuition around things. I'm sure you're similar. It's like, as I've gotten older, I've gotten so much better about just listening to myself, that intuitive knowledge and trusting, like, hey, if I have an instinct about a person or an event or whatever it is, I'm going to listen to it now. And I think the more we can apply that to everything, the better off we're going to be. Because in many ways, and I'm sure this can create a whole other podcast, but like in many ways, that is what makes us different. Is it's your instincts versus my instincts. It's like, that's truly what's unique. It's we each have very unique instincts, and in many ways, you could say those are godly, right? That those are messages from through your experience or through your vessel, whatever it is, and they're unique to you. And so, if you're not listening to those, then are you really here? Are you really being your unique, beautiful self?
Totally agree. We could talk for another week straight, I think, and I would love to do that. Where can everybody find Pluck?
So you can find us on our website at eatpluck.com. You can find us on Amazon, and then you can find us on socials. Pretty much all the socials, we're at eatpluck, except for Twitter or whatever is now called X. It's eat_pluck, but otherwise you'll find us at eatpluck. And then I'm at Chef James Berry, and yeah, check it out, everyone. It's truly the gateway to getting organ meats. It's the easiest and what I think most delicious way to get organ meats in your diet.
Well, I'm in, man. So now that I've tried the product, I've used it several times, and I'm enjoying it, I'm definitely going to incorporate it into all my foods. And I really appreciate you spending the time and educating us, and loved our conversation.
Yeah, ditto. I look forward to getting to meet in person. I love meeting people. I just feel like, immediate connection, so. Thank you.
100%.
Thank you for having me.
And we're even more connected. We got that whole redhead.
Yeah, the redhead.
We'll keep exploring.
Seriously. Yeah. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.